we learn and study. Apprenticeships are part of this. We want to double the number of apprenticeship jobs by 2025. That's 10,000 new opportunities for school students, career changers, people returning to work, or professionals who want to progress in their career. To ensure the apprenticeship system continues to deliver for both learners and employers, we're launching the Apprenticeship Action Plan. This initiative will ensure we have a modern apprenticeship system that reflects the Ireland we live in and work in. Apprenticeships are so much more than just learning on the job. At the moment, there are 60 programmes leading to valuable qualifications in areas like finance, accountancy, laboratory technicians, engineering, heavy vehicle mechanics, healthcare, and we'll be adding many more in the future. And this plan is very much for employers too. Taking on apprentices is a great way for you to build a highly skilled team and grow your company now and for the future. We'll have a range of supports for employers from different sectors to take on apprentices, including financial supports and an online system that makes the process easy and straightforward for you and your company. Anyone can be an apprentice, and anyone that wants to should be able to avail of this opportunity. To do this, we're going to make the system as flexible as possible so that you can earn while you learn. Apprenticeships are a solid and valuable way to get qualifications while you work, and through this process, you'll be building your career twofold. We're going to support apprentices throughout their journey with all the information they'll need on each and every opportunity and support available to help them along the way. With this exciting new plan, we're bringing everything together under one roof in a new National Apprenticeship Office. We'll be collaborating and working with people who know the apprenticeship system inside out. So anyone accessing the new system, learners, employers, or anyone interested in learning more, knows where and how to find the information they need and take the next step into an exciting, modern, supportive apprenticeship system.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Breslin, Secretary General of the Department of Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this morning's information event and discussion on the Action Plan for Apprenticeship 2021 to 2025. Apprenticeship sits at the heart of the tertiary and training system. It crosses the further and higher education sectors and brings together employers, education and training providers, and our national skills infrastructure. The Action Plan sets out an ambitious programme of development for apprenticeship for the next 5 years. It provides us with an opportunity to make a decisive difference, expanding career opportunities for individuals, developing the talent of our workforce, and contributing to the success of our economy and our society. It is based on extensive feedback from a wide range of stakeholders, and many of you will have been engaged with the development of the plan through submissions or feedback over the past year. I want to thank you for all your engagement. The plan recognises and supports the close partnerships that are integral to apprenticeship and to the progress made in recent years. The collaboration between the further and higher education sectors in providing for apprenticeship and the partnership between education and training, employers and partner organisations in developing and delivering apprenticeship. The format of today's session is that Minister Harris and Minister of State Collins will speak for a few minutes on the benefits of the plan. Phil O'Flaherty from the Further and Education Training Unit in the department will follow with a presentation giving an overview of the plan and its impact for employers, learners and the system. After this, there will be a panel discussion with an opportunity for a Q&A. The session will be recorded and will be available on the department's website over the coming week. We expect the event to wind up before noon, and I will now hand over to Minister Harris in a moment. Before I do, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank all of our panel members, particularly to thank Pádraig Walsh from QQI, who's agreed to facilitate the panel session, and particularly to thank you for your commitment and your participation in the development of the Apprenticeship Action Plan. So I'll introduce Minister Harris.
Thanks very much, Jim, and good morning to you and to everybody who's joined this webinar this morning. I want to really thank everyone for taking time to be here. I'm very encouraged to see at 10:30 on a what are we on a Wednesday morning. I think with 255 people on this call, and I think that's really a sign of the level of interest that there is in apprenticeships, but also the recognition and understanding that there is from such a wide range of stakeholders in terms of how apprenticeships really must be at the heart of our infrastructure when it comes to further and higher education. I know you're going to hear an awful lot of detail about the plan today, and indeed some asks, because we're very determined as we drew up this plan that it wasn't just a strategy or a glossy document, but that it is an action plan with a real big body of work that we all have a part to play now in getting on and implementing. I really want to thank all of the officials in my department who worked so hard on this plan, particularly Philip Flaherty, Trudy Duffy, Patricia, and the whole team, people who worked really, really hard to make this plan a reality, to make sure there was lots of consultation, lots of engagement, despite COVID making that more challenging than perhaps it would be at other times. I think it's fair to say that everybody on this call and the organizations that you represent share a common goal. And that common goal is for apprenticeships to be seen as a high quality and a prestigious pathway to successful careers, and for these opportunities to be available across all sectors of our economy in all parts of our country and leading to qualifications at all levels. For me, there's really 6 important parts to this plan in terms of where we want to get to. Firstly, we want more apprentices. We have set a very, very ambitious target of wanting to see 10,000 new registered apprentices every year by 2025. That's roughly a doubling of where we were last year. So that's the first thing, more apprentices. Second thing was we want to see a broader range of apprentices. Craft apprenticeships are really important. The traditional apprenticeships are really important. We want to see more of them. We want to support them more. We need to do that for the skills needs in our economy and in our society. But we also want to broaden the range of apprenticeships. So as I say, you can see apprenticeship opportunities in all parts of the economy and in a whole variety of careers. The third issue is we want to see a greater diversity. Traditionally, our apprenticeships have been overwhelmingly male. I mean, really overwhelmingly male. We need to see, when we look at apprenticeships, we need to see society looking back at us. So we're going to put a specific range of measures in place to try and incentivize and support greater female participation in apprenticeships, and also greater participation from a whole range of socioeconomic backgrounds, and indeed for people with disabilities. The fourth, we need the public sector not to just tell business how to do it, but to roll up its sleeves and get involved as well. There's really good examples of public sector apprenticeships, but there's not nearly enough happening in this space. So we're setting a very clear target in terms of wanting to see 750 new apprentices registered in the public sector each year from 2025. That is a massive body of work, but I believe it is key to bringing about the cultural change and to making sure that every single part, public and private, are doing all they can to get to where we want to get to when it comes to apprenticeships. Fifthly, we need to recognize that without businesses, there are no apprenticeships. We need to make it easier for businesses to get involved. We need to provide better financial supports, and we also need to provide fairer financial supports. It's not right and it's not fair that we currently provide grants to some businesses in relation to apprentices, but not to others. So we have very ambitious plans in the actions outlined for next year around putting in place a core grant for employers who take on apprentices regardless of that business. And the sixth and a really important part of this plan, and indeed apart from which everything else flows, is we need to have greater visibility when it comes to apprenticeships. I don't think there is as good an understanding as there could be in our country about what apprenticeships are. I think people have a very narrow view when it comes to a conversation around apprenticeships. And I also think the conversation we're having in our schools is killing off choice and flexibility and multiple pathways at far too early an age in somebody's educational journey. So greater visibility, reform of the processes that our school leavers go through in terms of seeing all their options. So at a high level, I think they're the 6 pillars on which this plan is made. Of course, there is a significant ask for the sector and for every part of it, for employers, for learners, for our education and training institutions. The plan does represent a very significant reform. We are going to need to put in place structural reform of the system itself to make sure we can deliver all of the ambition that I've outlined. And I acknowledge and know that reform takes time. Reform requires engagement. Reform needs to be founded on setting solid foundations for the growth of the system into the future. And it also needs to recognise that there are established relationships between the further and higher education sectors, and how can we enhance them? And we want to enhance them through our new National Apprenticeship Office. This is not about a turf war or anybody minding their patch. It's about everybody coming together in a new National Apprenticeship Office to drive forward this agenda. And it will bring together functions of both the HEA and SOLAS in this regard. I do want to say that the strong traditions of partnership and engagement which underline our national apprenticeship system will continue. Employers, unions, industry representatives, learners, and the education sector itself will all be at the very heart of the system, from membership of the Apprenticeship Consortia, but also membership of the new National Apprenticeship Alliance, who will provide a stakeholder voice in overseeing the delivery of the plan. So to anybody on this call representing staff, representing unions, I want you to know that you'll be very much involved in helping us design this new system. And of course, the voice of apprentices themselves who've contributed to this plan will also be central into the future. And I want to really thank so many people who contributed to this plan. We heard from thousands of apprentices across Ireland. We heard from hundreds of businesses across Ireland, some who have apprentices and some who don't. So this is not a plan written by myself or government or the civil service. It is a plan written by all of us from listening and learning from those of you who have very significant insights. So I really look forward to seeing an apprentice population which will be more representative of the general population in terms of gender, in terms of socioeconomic background, in terms of disability, in terms of ethnicity, one which involves the public service and the private sector, one which provides better supports for businesses, and one which is seen as a worthy, attractive, and equal option for many school leavers and career changers. If we get this right, and we're going to get this right together, I believe this will be seen in time as a transformational step that we took when it came to further and higher education in our country. I'm really excited about getting on with delivering it. We have a big body of work to do, and I suppose we're very much kicking off that today, moving from the launch phase into the implementation phase. So thank you so much for your support, for your partnership. And that word partnership, I don't use by accident. It's an intentional word. We need to all pull together, work together, and share our insights and experiences to get this exactly right. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Minister Collins. Thank you very much. Gur Magat.
Thanks very much, Minister Harris. I'm delighted to take the opportunity to participate in this morning's webinar and to say to everybody who has been involved in the production of this plan, the drafting of the plan and the launching of the plan, to give a big thanks. It really is revolutionizing the whole apprenticeship space. And I think the interest and the engagement that we have experienced as part of the public consultation and since the launch of the plan last week has been really, really immense. The public out there are very keen to engage in the whole area of apprenticeships because they now see a commitment within this new department that we're delighted to be associated with, Department of Further and Higher Education, a commitment to placing the whole area of apprenticeships at the centre of our further and higher education landscape. And that is really so important in terms of when we describe that we are revolutionising apprenticeships. We want to destigmatise apprenticeships, and we want to say to people that you can earn as you learn and take an option, one of many of the different types of apprenticeships that we're offering. I'm really excited about the whole area of apprenticeships that we have in development and the commitments within the plan to further expand the range and offering of apprenticeships as we emerge as society and as economy emerges post-COVID. Since the plan is launched last week, my own personal experience, I've spoken on 7 or 8 local radio stations who are really, really interested. That is the feedback on the ground and people messaging into the radio stations when you're on live asking questions in relation to it. So you can see from that type of activity and that type of communication out there that there's organic interest in relation to our apprenticeships on the ground out there. What Minister Harris has alluded to in relation to the National Apprenticeship Office and the National Apprenticeship Alliance is so important in terms of bringing all of our apprenticeship offerings, both traditional craft and our post-2016 apprenticeships, bringing it all in under the one governance structure and having a one-stop shop, if you like, to oversee and to manage the whole apprenticeship space is really, really the way to go. So delighted to take the opportunity to say a few words, to thank everybody who is engaged in the process and people, our partners who are yourselves on the ground in the various agencies who are working at the coalface on the front line in the whole area of apprenticeships, to thank you for your commitment and your dedication to fulfilling what is a major commitment within the programme for government in terms of modernising our apprenticeship system. So I'll now hand over to Phil O'Flaherty. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Really good to hear those words from the ministers, and you can really see the commitment from government that's behind this plan. I'm just going to go through in a little more detail the content of the plan. Many of you would have had the opportunity to read it at this stage, to look at some of the promotional materials that have been put out, or further our frequently asked questions document. And I know it's been kind of prompting conversations in various sectors and in various areas. And today is an opportunity to hear a little bit more about it, and also to to ask questions, to hear the perspectives of some of the key stakeholders around apprenticeship as well. So can I just ask that the presentation is shared? Thanks very much. Thanks, Tom. So to just move on there from the first slide, thanks. So I suppose a good place to start is where are we currently in terms of apprenticeship? So at the end of 2020, we had almost 20,000 registered apprentices. That was a big increase since 2015, and a lot of work went into that, at national level, at regional level, in education and training institutions, amongst employers, our unions, and all our partners to deliver that increase in apprenticeship activity. So we're on a good trajectory. We've also grown the base very significantly from the 27 apprenticeships that were already in place in areas like construction and motor and engineering and printing. And we've learned a huge amount from those areas around, what it takes to make apprenticeship really embedded within a sector, that kind of idea of skills being passed from, skills being passed on in a very systematic way within an occupation and within a sector. And we've used those learnings to grow apprenticeship now to 60 programs in total, and we've new apprenticeships in areas like auctioneering, ICT, and hospitality, finance, logistics. Minister Harris referenced the diversity issue around apprenticeship, and we've seen some progress. A lot of it due to that expansion in the base of apprenticeship, but also some work done within the craft apprenticeship system to grow female participation as well. But of course, we're nowhere near where we need to be. We recently marked the 1,000th female apprentice in our apprenticeship population. And it was something that was worthy of marking, but it was also an important reminder that 120s nowhere near good enough. Very significant state investment and growth in state investment over the last number of years, which more than doubled between 2016 and 2021, and we're at almost 200 million in investment. I call it state investment. Of course, it's resourced from the National Training Fund, where workers and employers are contributing as part of the PRSI system there. So it's very much, partnership is at every level in apprenticeship, including in relation to funding. And we also have a pipeline of further apprenticeships moving through. We've 18 currently in the development pipeline, and more expressions of interest coming through all the time. And we're very much open for business in terms of delivering new apprenticeships. So maybe just to move on. Thanks. So as both ministers said, we're hugely thankful for the depth of engagement that we've had around this plan. Almost 4,000 apprentices told us through a structured survey what they thought and their experience of apprenticeship. We've had over 60 formal written submissions, and many of those in turn based on a real canvassing of kind of sectoral stakeholder bases. So very much representing the views of a much broader range of people. We had a formal session nearing the end of the consultation piece as well, and we've had a specific survey looking at the experiences of small and medium enterprises as well. And all of those engagements, I think, have anchored our plan in real world experience. And as the Minister said, it's very much a kind of a collective plan based on what we've heard. So just moving forward there, thanks. So the vision that's set out in the plan says, you know, we're developing an apprenticeship system that's, and all these adjectives are important. It's flexible, it's responsive, it provides real value for employers and for apprentices. Is it attractive and accessible, easy to engage with, and doesn't compromise in terms of standards and quality. And that'll be delivered through 5 objectives. The first one very much around the quality and innovation. So very much around delivering the highest standards of work-based learning, and really empowering apprentices and employers to meet current skill needs and emerging skill needs. And we all know how the world of work has changed enormously over the last year, many of which, you know, a lot of which was accelerating trends that were already there. But the apprenticeship system needs to be really flexible and responsive to deliver on that. That we want employers really to buy into the apprenticeship system in not so much on a sectoral basis, which is of course important, but very much on a right the way across the economy, right the way across our enterprise base, a core way in which a highly skilled workforce is built, growth and productivity is fostered, through engagement in the apprenticeship system. And we all know that learning organisations are productive organisations and are innovative organisations, and that's really important. And obviously we have a number of things that we are doing to make the system more attractive for employers. And picking up on the Minister's opening remarks, the diversity issue around the apprenticeship population being much more reflective of the general population, and that's across gender, it's across disadvantage, it's across disability and a number of other areas. Apprenticeship should be welcoming, should be accessible, and in order to be so, needs to be accessible to everybody. Apprenticeship needs to be really valued and really valuable, and it means you will get the highest standards of qualifications that are really widely recognised right the way across the economy, and that apprentices themselves see that. Prospective apprentices, they're people who influence them, parents, career guidance counsellors, and how apprenticeship is really promoted systematically is extremely important. And obviously that the system itself is underpinned by clear governance and is kind of it's coherent and accessible, and we aren't all the time saying, well, if it's this type of apprenticeship, it's this way, and if it's another way. That we have a clear system underpinning the full range of apprenticeships. So just to move on there, thanks. Okay, so just to quickly go through how we're going to deliver on those objectives. So in total, there are 13 deliverables across the 5 objectives, over 60 individual actions. Under the first objective, we already have a very strong framework for quality assurance around apprenticeship, but we're moving into an era where we need to review all of that experience and use it to push forward with the next phase in delivering quality. So we've a huge amount of work in that area, led by QQI, but also around giving revised and extended guidance to the consortium themselves in terms of, what's expected of them, you know, how they need to support employers, how they need to be open to newer employers, how new other education and training providers can extend out the delivery and accessibility of those apprenticeships right the way across the country. And I want to talk about the National Apprenticeship Office, but you know, that's the source of this sort of expertise and guidance that can be given to the consortia, and the consortia themselves, of course, then are translating that for their own apprenticeship or groups of apprenticeships. We need a really robust data collection and performance framework around that. We've been very focused on getting the system off the ground over the last number of years. You know, we as we're continuing to kind of to argue and to provide an evidence base for resource allocation, it's really important that we're able to give clear indications around the performance of the apprenticeship system and the data that underpins it, and ultimately that the system itself is really responsive. So because apprenticeships are owned and run and managed close to the delivery, so by education and training providers, by employers, by unions, that flexibility and responsiveness is very much within the system. And we've seen huge flexibility and responsiveness actually in a lot of our apprenticeships over the period of the pandemic. So, you know, very much trying to embed that within the system. And obviously actions that support that include the things that are listed there around monitoring and feedback and apprenticeship outcomes. And we're also looking at things that will further bolster the apprenticeship system and experience around international mobility and collaboration across the island also. Just to move on to the next one. Thanks, Tom. So, in enhancing the value proposition to employers, I mean, we heard a lot around the cost of delivering apprenticeship, and it is a substantive commitment. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But also around some of the non-financial issues in terms of, mentoring, in terms of, providing, really good support for employers in terms of recruiting apprentices, sourcing high quality candidates for apprenticeship, and then giving them the very best experience that they can on the job. And particularly for smaller employers, some of that can be quite difficult, and it's a major commitment. So how those supports are delivered is really really important. We are instituting from 2022 an annual employer grant for all apprentices that employers have on their books. As people will know, there is a incentivization scheme there at the moment. That's based on recruitment. The new system is very much based on the apprentice population that each employer has, and delivering a grant, a per capita grant based on that, and we need to engage on the details of that now over the remainder of this year. That can be available to employers where the apprentices aren't currently being paid off the job, because there's very substantial state resources going into, particularly in the craft sector, into the payment of allowances where employer or when apprentices are off the job in those schemes. So it's very much around delivering, comparable supports to right the way across the employer base. A real focus on increasing participation by employers across all sectors. Some of that will be in the development of new apprenticeships, but also really about supporting consortia to push their apprenticeships really strongly right the way across the base, and of course also in the craft sector, to make sure that apprenticeship is really core to what's happening. The delivery of the National Development Plan, the public procurement framework, and the other levers there that we can use. And as the Minister said, a real step change in availability of apprenticeship across the public sector. We're talking about moving to kind of 7 or 8 times the level of recruitment that we currently have in the public sector, and there's a huge by the end of the plan, and there's a huge culture change involved in that. So you can move on to the next one there, Tom, thanks. So particularly in running the survey with apprentices, we heard a lot of messages, I suppose, that we hadn't heard in a systematic way before. And embedding those sorts of feedback mechanisms in apprenticeship is critical, and obviously it's an important part of the kind of quality system as well, but also in terms of apprenticeship governance, you know, and that inclusive structure that ensures that apprentices themselves have a say in how apprenticeship is delivered and how it's designed. And obviously apprentices are really well represented by unions in any sector, but also, you know, hearing from apprentices themselves, important. The fact that the National Apprenticeship Advisory Committee has brought a learner into its membership as well, and that's been a really valuable voice too. And we need to establish, monitor and assess targets around the kind of inclusion agenda in apprenticeship, and ensure that access to apprenticeship is widened. And you know, a lot of that is around the visibility of apprenticeship opportunities, ensuring that they're really widely and systematically visible and available. But also in terms of the kind of routes into apprenticeship, that they're, you know, really open, and that there's a focused effort made on delivering an access to apprenticeship system that enables the engagement from underrepresented groups. And obviously we will also use our elements of the financial grant to further incentivize engagement from groups that we would like to see, in particular apprenticeships, and we have a particular way of doing that, or developing a way of doing that in terms of apprenticeship that have a gender balance in either direction. Obviously at the moment it's predominantly you know, where females are underrepresented, but where representation is below a certain level, we can further incentivize the recruitment of target groups, and that's an important part of of the offering too. So just to move forward there, thanks, Tom. Sorry. So the promotion agenda around apprenticeship is critical. It's really important, as I mentioned in the previous slide, and you would have heard Minister Minister Harris speak about, you know, things like CAO reform, and the use of channels into apprenticeship through, for example, the Jobs Ireland website, Department of Social Protection use, our own apprenticeship.ie site. You know, the visibility of apprenticeship is really critical, but also the surrounding promotion campaign. We have a really effective promotion campaign in Generation Apprenticeship, but we need to redouble our efforts in that area, and ensure that apprenticeships can't be ignored when those conversations around next steps are taking place in families and in other settings. It's also important that apprentices themselves can really take ownership of their own learning journey and have clear communication around, you know, where they are along their learning journey, access online to their registration details and information, access to support networks around their apprenticeship, you know, in a way maybe that other learners have in a more systematic way in our institutions. So that's this is really important, both in terms of, you know, selling apprenticeship as a valued route, but also in terms of ensuring that it's a really rewarding experience. So just moving on to the next one, Tom. So underpinning all of that, because as I say, as I said, look, there's a really sort of challenging program of work that's there. It's important that it's kind of overseen in a cohesive and structured way. So the next slide will show, will represent this kind of graphically, but we are putting in place a new system, essentially bringing together the best of the craft and consortium models of apprenticeship, ensuring that at programme level, programs are governed in a systematic way that's close to the employer education sector, so that apprenticeships are really being actively managed by employers, learner representatives, unions, and education and training providers close to delivery, which enables that sort of flexibility. But also that at national level, our agencies, and particularly SOLAS and the HEA, are collaborating in a very systematic way in terms of the delivery of their functions around apprenticeship. And that's shown on the next slide, Tom, if you could put that up. Thanks. So so if you look at the top right, we're establishing a national apprenticeship office, or rather, I should say, SOLAS and the HEA will be establishing a national apprenticeship office, and governed with a governance structure reporting into the boards of SOLAS and the Higher Education Authority. Apologies, by the way, some of the formatting I think may have been lost on this slide, and very much around the delivery of the action plan, the systematic oversight of the delivery of all of the actions, the implementation of all of the actions, and the delivery of the functions of SOLAS and the HEA around the funding, the development of the system, the management of the system, the regulation of the system, and the promotion and review of apprenticeship. So all of this comes together in a single national apprenticeship office, very much the visible face of apprenticeship, an accessible service, for learners, for employers, and importantly for the apprenticeship consortia. So so every apprenticeship, or it may not be one consortium per apprenticeship, but every apprenticeship or group of apprenticeships will be overseen by a consortium, ensuring that they're industry-led. There's employer representatives, there's employee representatives, there's unions, and that they're engaging closely with the education and training providers who are, who have that kind of formal responsibility for curriculum development, for designing the delivery of the program, and ensuring that it's really coherent, both on and off the job. So really, the engine of apprenticeship is very much around a really strong central national governance coming through the National Apprenticeship Office, and then a series of sort of satellite consortia running each program or each group of programs. Formal governance of National Apprenticeship Offices very much through the boards of SOLAS and the Higher Education Authority, and they'll be signing off on a formal governance plan, and it will also be recognised in statute. But there is significant stakeholder oversight of the delivery of the plan and the work of the National Apprenticeship Office through a new National Apprenticeship Alliance that will have kind of formal decision-making functions around some things, including the core occupational profiles underpinning each apprenticeship, so that there's clear national kind of oversight and coherence around the apprenticeship system, and that the alliance can also establish subcommittees, and we are saying right at the outset that there will be one on equity of access, and that'll be really important in terms of the kind of diversity and inclusion agenda and access agenda in apprenticeship. So just moving forward, nearly finished now, you'll be relieved to hear. So just to finish up really on the timelines and just on the where we want to get to at the end. So 2021 very much around putting the infrastructure in place, establishing the National Apprenticeship Office, and there's some there's work involved in establishing that office in a robust manner, appointing the National Apprenticeship Alliance, beginning the planning process to ensure that sort of the single model is setting off on the right path, developing those sorts of supports for the consortia, and also very much around forming a very clear baseline around apprenticeship outcomes as well, so we can measure our progress going forward. Next year, we'll be launching the financial supports for employers available from the start of the year, specific bursaries around or top sliced funding around target groups, developing a roadmap for the public service around recruitment of apprenticeships. So really systematically working with public sector employers to put meat on the bones of that commitment around 750 apprentices coming into the public service every year. Migrating the consortia-led programs to the single apprenticeship model. So establishing those relationships and guidance between the consortia, the National Apprenticeship Office, and that guidance around the operation of consortia, developing or building on the experience of the last number of years, and also really getting going on the equity of access agenda through the National Apprenticeship Alliance. Further on into the plan, there is the craft apprenticeship system. There's a very significant piece of work involved in migrating the craft apprenticeship system, which is quite centralised at the moment, into those kind of very supportive consortia led by employers and unions working in close collaboration with education and training providers. And there's a formal migration plan that needs to be developed and will be developed by SOLAS, working with its subcommittee of its board, the National Apprenticeship Advisory Committee, to plan that out and to set the timelines and to ensure that that's properly overseen by the stakeholders, by the unions and employers in those areas. And also then moving forward with annual plans to government and tracking the delivery and showing the accountability around the delivery of the plan. Just the final slide. Sorry, Tom, if you could, great, thanks a million. So as the ministers have said, we're looking to double apprenticeship recruitment, so moving to 10,000 apprenticeship jobs available every year, and a much greater number of those being in the public sector, embedding apprenticeship as a first choice for employers and a real go-to approach for skills development, and that very much it's what people are thinking about when they're taking the next step in their educational journey, when they're looking for a new career, they're looking to return to work, and lots of people have been displaced over the last period, so it's really important that accessibility and availability of apprenticeship and visibility of apprenticeship and apprenticeship recruitment, where people can really see the opportunities in a very systematic way, a much more representative apprenticeship population, and that governance piece at the end of the plan, with all our apprenticeships formally within a single governance model that's really responsive to the needs of individual sectors, individual occupations, and really valued by employers and by apprentices themselves, and of course an apprenticeship system that really grapples with the kinds of things which are hugely challenging for us all, climate action, digitization, ensuring that development is right the way across our regions, and of course the demographic issues as well. So so we felt it would be useful maybe just to kind of set that out for you, and hopefully it informs kind of panel session. It might prompt some questions on your part that you'll have an opportunity to raise in the next period, in the period between now and 12 o'clock with our panel. So am I handing directly to Porrick, I think.
Thanks very much, Phil, and thanks to the Secretary General and the two ministers for setting out the plan there. My name is Porrick Walsh. I'm the Chief Executive of Quality Qualifications Ireland. We have a role in the validation and certification of the craft apprenticeships, but we are also involved in the process for the education training boards and some of the the private provider. So our role is going to change as part of this process as well. A panel has been put together for this. We have 6 people on the panel. So I'd like to briefly introduce those and ask them to turn on their videos. And as the Minister Harris outlined at the start, when he looks at apprenticeship, he wants to see society looking back at him. So we have 3 men and 3 women on the panel. So I think we're doing a good job there. I'll just briefly introduce those. We have William Bozang, who's the Assistant Secretary with responsibility for further and higher education in the Department of Further Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science. We've Liam Burney, who's the Industrial Officer in the Dublin Office Secretariat of the Irish Congress of Trade Unions. Tommy Maloney from G&T Cranton, member of the Construction Industry Federation, and is currently a member of the Apprenticeship Council. Claire McGee, who's the Head of Education and Innovation Policy in IBEC, who's also a member of the Apprenticeship Council. Dr. Vivian Patterson is the Head of Skills, Engagement and Statistics in the Higher Education Authority, and also a member of the Apprenticeship Council. And Dr. Mary Liz Trant is the Executive Director of the Delivery Division in Solus, and also a member of the Apprenticeship Council. So you can see from that we've a wide range of people who are impacted by this plan and who've been involved in it. We have 259 attendees, fantastic number, in addition to the panelists here. And we've already had quite a lot of engagement on the question and answer session. A number of the questions can actually be answered by our colleagues in the department, some of the specific ones that they're answering, and a number of them have been left open. And when I've gone through a couple of the preliminary questions, maybe I'll go back to those and let those go to some of the panels. So maybe if I just want to bring in some of the panel members. First, William, if I could just address this to you. The Minister has set out a priority of having a better integrated further and higher education system. Where do you see apprenticeship fitting in with the education and training sector of the future? And in particular, how do you think this plan will help here?
Yeah. Thanks, Padraig, and thanks for everybody for participating this morning. And it's great to have such a big attendance. And really, from the department's perspective, the engagement we've had on this has really helped us try to make sure that this plan is a plan that ensures that apprenticeships work for the future. And I mean, what I was struck, just in responding to your question, Padraig, how the apprenticeship plan, I mean, obviously we've been very focused on this particular project, but it's part, as you're saying, is a bigger program work the department has. And over the last couple of months, we've had a couple of meetings in the National Skills Council talking about the future world of work. And just all those, and they've been referenced in some of the presentations or in the Minister's comments and Phil's presentations. When you think about automation, digitalization, climate change, climate action, all the pressures driving the need to continuously upskill and reskill our workforce and impacting across all areas of our kind of skill system, from, you know, traditional trades, construction, right up to administrative, managerial and kind of professional employment. So we all know, you know, and hopefully, I mean, I know it's strongly reflected in the plan, the importance of work-based learning and apprenticeship in the purest form of that, for ensuring that we have a kind of key element of the tertiary system, you know, when you think about apprenticeship, that ensures that in you know, additional to the key kind of the essential technical knowledge and expertise that people need to do their jobs properly and effectively, that they also develop those kind of, well, the technical terms is transversal skills, but I mean, they're the essential human skills that we need to be effective in our careers, and I'm sure in our personal lives as well. And we all know that notwithstanding what can be done in terms of formal education, it's really in the workplace that things like leadership, creativity, team working, emotional intelligence, all of those kind of characteristics, that's the opportunity. That's, you know, as we reflect on our own careers, that's where we've learned those things. So apprenticeship, looking at apprenticeship in a kind of a broader frame, that combination of on the job and off the job, the engagement with the formal education system, but then the engagement in the world of work at an early stage in people's careers. It's really a critical element of our strategy to ensure that the tertiary education system works for each learner, works for the economy, and works for society.
That's great. Thanks very much, William, on that. And maybe if I could address the next question to Claire. I mean, it's clear from the ambition that the Minister set out that we need more employers to get involved in apprenticeship. What benefits do you see for apprenticeship for the employer and the apprentice, and what challenges are there that need to be addressed?
Thanks, Porrick, and I'm delighted to be here today. I think today is a good day now that we're getting to actually talk about the action plan for the future. So as William really said there, apprenticeships bring that strong alignment between training and employment schemes and the labour market. Learners can build their work-ready skills in their chosen occupation, and then for the organisation, they can grow a new talent pipeline. So there's a kind of a win-win scenario for everyone there. I think this plan rightly focuses on making the apprenticeship programmes much more sustainable, much more accessible, much more flexible for employers to get involved. And if we think about how our economy has evolved over the last 40 years, and in particular since the turn of the century, I suppose, and just kind of channeling some of those big mega trends that William referenced, business models have completely evolved. And as a result, the design of an organisation, the allocation of work, and how organisations hire and recruit and bring in new people has completely changed. So this plan should be reflective of that challenge and be looking at how we can make sure that the system, the supporting system, responds to that and is as agile how different organisations are changing. The Minister's reference, I think, is really important to the underpinning principles of partnership and engagement. I think they're paramount, and we need to kind of keep those as our guiding principles for the plan for the future. But really, to deliver the targets, we need to be much more flexible than what we perhaps have been in the past. And that one-size-fits-all approach to cover multiple industry sectors is no longer appropriate. I think we might have to look at some of the challenges associated with the terminology or the language of apprenticeship, whether that suits the industry sector and whether it works with their other opportunities that exist. We perhaps need to be a little bit more focused on the discrete challenges for different organisations. For example, if they're foreign direct investment companies, they need to go and seek approval for increased employment contracts from global headquarters. This can take time and may require additional support for companies to make that pitch internally and to highlight the value proposition to those who are not familiar with the Irish system. So they have their own internal challenges to be able to kind of champion this, internationally, let's say. Then maybe in relation to more Indigenous companies or indeed SMEs, they're going to really require those financial incentives to support the rollout of training and mentoring and to support that collaboration and the network that they could ultimately build across the system. From an IBEC perspective, I think our big idea for the submission for this new action plan was about using the system to drive innovation at the business level and also at the education system level. This is a really kind of great opportunity to do that. I just want to give you a really good example of this. Last September, I had the pleasure of meeting the winner of the Generation Apprenticeship competitions who were based in Pfizer with Minister Harris and the Taoiseach. And it was really great to see how this company were using the programme to build a team who could work on a very specific project for the company that otherwise would never have got off the ground. The apprentices were contributing to the organisation at an incredibly high level. They were getting exposure to many different business functions and those kind of transversal skills that William referenced. And the education partner then was supporting the Pfizer team to deliver this project. I think this is the crux of what we really need to champion. And this is the power of what apprenticeship can ultimately deliver. But we need to start talking about that value and how it can be spread across all the different stakeholders. So there's plenty of challenges. I think the devil is going to be in the detail of the action plan. And I know we'll get into that maybe a little bit later. But I think there's a huge opportunity now to use apprenticeship but once it's flexible, to be able to drive innovation across the broader system. And I think if anything over the last year, what we've seen through COVID and different sectors, how interdependent different industry sectors actually are, but we can't treat them all as exactly the same and all with the same kind of hiring practices. And we need to kind of remember that. The other thing I would also just say around some of the challenges, but can be quickly shifted into opportunities. We need to make sure that the supporting system and the infrastructure around that is as equally as agile, so that we can't lose employers who may be initially warm to the idea, but because there's a backlog in workload, or because of the network isn't just as responsive as it possibly can, we can't afford for that to happen. So we either have to be armed up and resourced to be able to deliver this as best we possibly can in the most speedy fashion that we can.
Great, thanks, Claire, and great to hear about your experience of the positive examples of apprenticeship from the winners last year. There's a lot of questions coming through on the Q&A. A number of those will be answered because there's specific questions by departmental staff as part of this process. But there's also a Q&A booklet that is available on the action plan, and that's something that people will be looking to update, and maybe some of the questions that come through will be answered there. So if you don't get a chance to come to your specific question, don't worry, it will be addressed. Maybe Vivian, if I can ask you something on this. Do you think that apprenticeship has the potential to help the higher education sector deal with the projected growth in demand from learners? And do you get a sense that the traditional universities are going to get involved in delivery beyond, say, the University of Limerick, who are already involved?
Thanks, Borg, and good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here today. I suppose first thing that I'll say is that apprenticeship is higher education. So, you know, that people already participating on apprenticeships are meeting demand in the higher education sector. So I think we just need to be careful to kind of move away from that opinion that apprenticeship is an alternative to higher or further education. It's simply a different pathway to which you can gain a higher education or a further education qualification. So that's, I think, a key message that needs to be brought out, particularly for the influencers like parents, that they can get that message across to their kids. The higher education system has responded very strongly to the new apprenticeship system since it emerged 5 years ago. So far we've about 21 apprenticeships in the higher education system across the University of Limerick, the technological universities and the IOTs. And what we're also seeing is the expansion of apprenticeships that have started in one provider across multiple providers nationally. So that's really great to see. I suppose your question, Borg, around how do I feel that traditional universities are going to get more involved in apprenticeship? I think we have to have more involvement if we're going to deliver this plan, and I think that's really important. I think there are a number of actions in this plan that will help, in particular the establishment of the National Apprenticeship Office, which gives a single point of contact, and the recognition that both further and higher education are, and the importance of both sectors in the apprenticeship system. I would like maybe to see a conversation opening up again about the naming of apprenticeships and, you know, potentially using the term degree apprenticeship to emphasize the fact that these are higher education qualifications, because in my opinion, I don't think that message has got across to people and potential students that could potentially enter into apprenticeship. I mean, the idea that you can get a higher education qualification and be paid at the same time is absolutely fantastic. And I think if more people were aware of it, you definitely see an increase in the number of people who would traditionally go to a university or an institute of technology or technological university taking that apprenticeship route. I think another opportunity that could come out of the development of this new action plan is to look at how we could maybe commence more development of FE-HE partnerships in the delivery of some new apprenticeships. So could we look at the opportunities around maybe starting with your first year in a further education college and then moving seamlessly into a higher education provider to finish off your apprenticeship and get your qualification? I'm particularly thinking about the roles of the technological universities here. because they are going to be the key drivers of regional engagement and the national skills agenda. One area that's going to help, I think, in the development of apprenticeships across higher education is that a number of the higher education institutions are improving and developing their structures for engagement with enterprise through the Human Capital Initiative Pillar 3 projects. And I'm hoping that these conversations that they're having with industry will help to maybe not only develop programs within higher education, but also develop apprenticeship programs going forward. And I think it's really important, the involvement of higher education, I think particularly in terms of kind of new and emerging technologies and the type of innovative research that's carried out within universities that we could leverage in the development of apprenticeships across the system.
Okay, thanks very much, Vivian. That's a very interesting point to make about the naming of apprenticeships. The new NFQ fan that the QQI have promoted have taken out the concept of higher education and further education in there, and have included professional awards, occupational based awards, where people can see that the apprenticeship actually fits and is aligned at the same levels as the degree programs, but there's still obviously a body of work to go on that. Thanks very much for that. Maybe if I can move over to Liam Burney of Congress. Liam, the trade union sector has always had a major role to play in the traditional craft apprenticeships. What role do you see for it in say, the new apprenticeships, or the challenges around that as the changes in this plan come forward?
Well, thank you, Pádraig, and I'm very happy to be here this morning. Congress made a very detailed submission to the consultation process, and we were very happy to do so, as did some of our affiliated unions. I think, first of all, while the action plan is welcome, and obviously regularly we should look at systems for training to make sure that they're, particularly vocational training, to make sure kind of that they're delivering on the needs of not only people who are apprentices, but also kind of meeting the needs of our labour market, of our economy, and also of also ensuring kind of that we have, resulting from training and development, high quality employment. And one of the things we were anxious to say during our contribution to the development of the action plan is that not everything in the apprenticeship system is broken, and that actually there are very, very good elements of the apprenticeship system that in creating a new action plan, we should recognise as being very good, and we should use as a basis for developing future apprenticeships. And Congress does welcome the opportunity kind of to participate in the process of looking at what new areas and new skills development will lend itself to apprenticeship training. And we are very keen to be involved in the development of new apprenticeships across a whole range of areas. But it's important that we take the learning that we've had from the last 50 or 60 years, where apprenticeship have provided very, very important training opportunities for people, have developed very highly skilled people who are available to all sorts of sectors in the economy, construction in particular, and that we make sure kind of that, as I said, that we use them models in order to inform the development of new training and apprenticeship programs. There's a lot to be learned from what we have developed in this country up until now. But there are lots of areas where we can have, apprenticeship training as a model for development in the sector. And indeed, in the public sector, as the ministers have spoken about this morning, that the public sector is going to take do some of the heavy lifting in terms of hiring apprenticeships going forward, and that's to be very welcome. And there are lots of parts of the public sector where skills development could be enhanced by the use of apprenticeships. So I think this is a very important opportunity. It's a very exciting opportunity. I think the development of a specific government department with responsibility for higher education and skills development and all that is a very important development, because it places higher education in its own right at the cabinet table and at government, and I think that's an important development. So it's an important and exciting opportunity, and we certainly won't be lacking in playing our part in the trade union movement, in making sure kind of that we get absolutely the most we can from the action plan. I know there are colleagues on the call from trade unions this morning who have huge experience, or on the webinar this morning, huge experience in the area of apprenticeship, and we're certainly a very keen partner and keen to be involved in the development of the action plan going forward. So thanks for that, Pádraig, and I hope that was answered the question that you asked.
Thanks very much, Liam. That's very, very helpful. Tommy, if I can move over to you. I mean, the last year has been a very challenging one for the country, but for the construction industry, say, in particular. Just wondering how the new action plan can assist the industry as the country reopens, and particularly, I suppose, the new exciting areas of green technology that will be a key part of that in future.
Yeah, good morning all, and it's great to be on this and great to have an opportunity to promote apprenticeship. We, speaking on behalf of the construction industry, my fellow members, we're delighted and welcome to the new plan. We'll be contributing to it and helping it along as we have the development of the 2013 plan, and indeed the whole initiatives involved in setting up of what we would consider a plan, a system that has over the years served us well. I know we realised in the future there are going to be different apprenticeships centred around green economy, etc., green development, but what we would be anxious is that we recognise there are currently 3 cohorts or 3 subgroups of apprentices. There's the traditional crafts, as in electrical, mechanical, carpentry, pipe fitting, which have been very successful over the years and have proved, to not only in international competition, but also with the success of the companies, quite large, substantial companies who have been major success not only at home, but internationally. And most of this success is due to the quality of the people that we've been producing. Currently, there are 8,000 young people training in the electrical area. They will go on and be major contributors to the country, and not only our industry, but also the green economy. The electrical trade and profession is probably the one that's going to help us most in that area. But the second cohort, if you like, would be in the pre-2016 family as well, but they would be what we would usually refer to as the wet trades mostly. Now they've suffered from numbers more than quality. We continue to produce, and with the good work in Solis, we continue to produce very good quality apprentices in these areas, plastering, etc., painting, very good. The problem is the numbers involved in that. And then we have the third cohort, which is the post-2016 group, designed but not exclusively to provide apprentices with for professional services. They've probably in the past been traditionally served through CAO, diploma and degree routes. So we have those 3 cohorts, and we'd be very anxious that the whole structure and that the process takes clear recognition of those 3 elements. In other words, and to go along with what Liam said, not everything is broken by any means, but we do see there are some great benefits in this plan. Particularly welcome the promotional emphasis on apprenticeship as serious option to school leavers. The Generation Apprenticeship campaign has been a major success and is built on initiatives that we in the CIF have had, including school competitions, etc. That's brilliant. The mention in the plan of the authorised officers, and maybe a different role for them, is really good. They will be particularly supportive to us in the area of the problem trades, if you want to call them that, and I really put it in inverted commas because the trade isn't a problem, it's the numbers going into it. They're on the ground with, and hopefully with the continuance of some financial support in that area, both for the recruitment and also for the provision of assessors to the small and medium-sized enterprises that consist, are the major contributors to that side of the business. The drive to increase the number of females and other minority groups in particular is particularly significant to construction. Drawing on 50% of the population to fulfill our training needs is not sensible. We don't need to tell anyone that. Funding supports and take-on initiatives are welcome, as it is a continuance and extension of the current off-the-job funding of apprentices. That's really important for, particularly, as I say, in the electrical trade. We certainly will do everything we can to contribute to the objectives. Objective 1, a high quality and initiative approach. We'll be supporting regular curriculum reviews. I mean, I think that's probably where we keep each apprenticeship at its top level. Employer-driven responses. We'll be absolutely involved in any promotions involved. Apprentices for All, I just mentioned about the female participation, etc., and other groups. We have a good relation, a valued option for making sure that the apprenticeship is a valued option for school leavers is so important. It's so important for us because you form the person at a very early age, as we all know, and we've found that the promotions we have done in schools, and we've done many promotions in schools, we've also done many competitions, etc., but a centralized approach to this is really helpful. The single coherent system does have its problems for us, but we can see that the support supplied from people within the industry we should be able to get there. It's difficult to see exactly how that is going to pan out, but certainly we'll be behind it and we'll be giving it every support.
Thanks a million, Tommy. A question then for Mary Liz. The new structure set out in the action plan envisage a different role for Solas in future. I wonder if you could just briefly outline that, in particular the benefits that you think will accrue for that and some of the challenges.
Yeah, thanks Pádraig. Look, I mean, I think it's a great day for apprenticeship in Ireland today as we start into, as the Minister said, now into implementation. I have had the privilege with many on the call, and I think many participating, to be involved in apprenticeship for a number of years now. And I think, we're moving into a new phase where apprenticeship really becomes a central part of skills development in Ireland, and a big part of how, potentially how employers are going to recruit and retain staff. And it's super. I think, the messages getting this morning about just how, everybody's just really looking forward to this period ahead. You're absolutely right, Pádraig. I've been working in Solas now for a relatively short period of time, probably about 6 years, but I have a lot of colleagues who've been working on apprenticeship for most of their careers, hugely committed, and I suppose have contributed to, some of the progress that Liam and others have mentioned over the years, and some of the great moments for apprenticeship in Ireland on the world skills stage and the Ireland skills stage. And we're all really looking forward to this. We can all see how important it is, and how, just as apprenticeship moves into a new stage. I think the challenge is going to be for both ourselves and the HEA working together now, and working with all of our partners across further and higher education and employers to really kind of get the new National Apprenticeship Office off to a really good start. And to create that opportunity for the full tertiary system to work together and move forward. And the Minister mentioned number one, I think, on his list, and also Minister Collins, more apprentices. That's our doubling the number of apprentices by 2025 each year. That means that there needs to be a lot more opportunities, employers, offering those opportunities out there. And to do that, we need to have the whole system, I suppose, driving this and supporting this. and really demonstrating how partnership with enterprise, you know, is at the heart of apprenticeship and is at the heart of how our education system is going to thrive and grow. Just to say very briefly, I suppose, you know, and I think some of the great opportunities with the National Apprenticeship Office is that to be able to bring the whole system of how employers say become approved, how they're supported, to really get that into a very advanced, future-focused IT platform basis where, you know, it's very easy for employers to access apprenticeship, to get apprentices, to be approved, you know, to actually be supported in how they actually bring apprentices through the system and mentor and so on. We know from working with Claire and colleagues in IBEC that, you know, it takes time for employers to kind of build this into their recruitment processes. And that, I think, a big opportunity and a big requirement, you know, for the next number of years is going to be actually the education system working in partnership with enterprise and also the National Apprenticeship Office to really make that feasible and doable, and to understand the challenges that employers have, whether they're FDIs, whether they're micro companies, whether they're SMEs, to engage with and use apprenticeship. I think the opportunity of research, you know, new types of research is going to be really important as well. For instance, we know abroad that there's great information coming back from, you know, from enterprise about how apprentices, you know, stay with their companies, are fantastic contributors to their companies for maybe 5 years longer than the average employee. We need to build that kind of base of knowledge and evidence in Ireland and use that as we expand the system. So I think, again, the office provides an opportunity to really pull that together. And then the final point, I think it's come up quite a bit this morning, is about visibility of apprenticeship, and looking at some of the questions and comments we've got on the Q&A. You know, there's still a gap in understanding within the public about what apprenticeship offers, who it's for. You know, I think it was Jacinta Dalton, I saw the first question about, you know, that sort of sense that somehow apprenticeship is for, you know, an alternative for other types of learners that aren't more academically inclined. That is just, we have to really get rid of that. That is something that we have to challenge. And we do that by employers talking about the fantastic benefits of apprentices, the fantastic talent they get through the apprenticeship route. We do that by apprentices themselves and graduates talking about their own experience, why they chose this as just a way of learning, just a different way of learning, a fantastic way of learning because you're earning at the same time. So I think there's a huge amount ahead. I think it's really exciting. And on behalf of everyone in Solis, we're really looking forward to working with the entire system and with the enterprise community to make this a real success over the coming years. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mary-Liz. I'm always reminded of when people are talking about you know, apprenticeship as an alternative option or off-road, of the Bob Dylan line, the song that goes, "Go to jail, jump bail, join the army if you fail." You know, that's not a recruitment process for the army. Just looking at the questions that are coming through, it's great to see the variety of them. I'm struck by a comment in there, and we know ourselves how important parents are in terms of the impact it has on the choices that school leavers have, but also the importance of peers. And a survey of degree insurance apprenticeships in the past fortnight showed that 100% of apprentices would recommend the programme to friends and family. And I think that's something that does come through. I see a question there from Gina Quinn, who I assume is Gina from President of NCI, about, are there any plans to promote the new apprenticeships with employers, particularly suggesting that, as Mary-Liz says, some of the new areas of apprenticeship are still viewed with caution by some sectors. So does someone want to take that about, are there plans particular to go further with promoting new apprenticeships? Someone might take that.
Padraig, we'll absolutely have to reach out in that way. You know, I mean, from the department's perspective, you hear so much about sort of, you know, the technical term skills mismatch. You know, we're not producing skills that we need. And think about it from an employer's perspective. Just a quick anecdote, you know, talking to a senior executive in a multinational tech business in Ireland, and he's mentoring, you know, a very successful Irish business, and just amazed at the extent to which their HR policy, and, you know, speaking as a career civil servant, obviously, You know, people have other priorities and have to kind of deal with the market as they find it. But it's kind of constant churn, trying to find the right skills, people coming in, people leaving. And when you think about an apprenticeship as an opportunity to actually develop in partnership with educational training providers, in partnership with public sector agencies, in partnership with employer representatives, a kind of a work-based learning model that generates the skills that you need. And it's such an attractive proposition. It should be such an attractive proposition to employers. And what we need to work through the plan is communicating that to them. And indeed, the whole question of incentives is important as well. And I'm sure Claire would have important perspectives on what could be the kind of the pivot or the hinge issues that could get us over the line in communicating that model, because we're all bought into the principle, but unless we land it, you know, well, where are we?
Yeah, Claire, I think you're spot on, William. Oh yeah, sorry, Park, but I think William's spot on there. I mean, the theory and the principle of this is really a no-brainer, you know, when you think about it. But actually, it's where the challenges come when the rubber hits the road, and how then it can be integrated into a business. So when we talk about promotion, that's not just kind of very simple marketing, you know, through advertising or billboard campaigns or anything. This is really around relationship building, and it requires shoe leather, it requires time, it requires continual kind of engagement to be able to bring certain employers on this new journey and this pathway. So that ultimately has to be resourced somewhere within the system as well. And it's looking at, I suppose, the barriers and how do we ultimately break those down. It's understanding business cycles, it's understanding when, you know, recruitment kind of grows and dips again, and making sure that it's in line with all of that. So I would like to see that maybe when the National Apprenticeship Office is established, that actually there's a dedicated work stream on actually how do we target employers. I think maybe over the past, we were very much kind of building the bridge as we were walking over it, particularly for the new consortia-led programs. We've a huge amount of learning over the last 5 years and how they've been kind of rolled out. But now we need to really kind of copper fasten that and come up with really kind of smart solutions to be able to target employers. Because the concept is great, and I think there are a huge number of employers who are really keen on this. But like, just going back to my Pfizer example or some of the other great examples, it requires multiple people in an organization to be able to deliver this. It requires a really kind of, I suppose, ambitious and courageous HR professional to bring this into the organization. That individual then has to laterally influence other business functions across the organization to be able to work and develop the project. So that requires a huge amount of building. It's not so we need to really kind of be, how can we help those companies to get this over the line? It's like any new investment decision that businesses have to make in Ireland. How do they, you need to build a business plan, you need to be able to build a business case around it. How do we help them then pitch internally to be able to do it? If we look at the success of the craft apprenticeships, this is where I think the beauty of the shared learning can be. We now have business owners and that entrepreneurial mindset that has come through the craft apprenticeship system. And those individuals, you know, started as an apprentice, then they moved through the system, they got their education, and then they became business leaders. And therefore they see that cycle, you know, constantly kind of being much more sustainable. We now need to see that learning transfer into the other industry sectors, because look, we're all busy people. People hire what they know. They hire through their own experiences. This is a culture mindset. This is an organizational mindset. So how do we bring that entrepreneurial mindset that exists, that was fostered through the craft apprenticeship or the pre-2016 programs, and bring that into the consortia-led programs now? Huge opportunity to share that. Because what I'd love to see in the future is that future CEOs of some of these organizations came through the apprenticeship system, and that's what they know, and that's the mindset that they'd ultimately try to kind of breathe through their own organizations. And we've seen that in the craft side. Why, let's try and deliver that in the more newer programs. But I think a dedicated work stream on employers is going to be very necessary for this phase of the program.
Thanks very much, Chair. We're nearly up on time. There's a question there that struck me from Cian Anderson, which I maybe Mary Liz can take. Two linked questions. What's the strategy to communicate the changing shape of apprenticeships to younger people? And in particular, how are we communicating that emerging skills like green technology, etc., are now covered in apprenticeships and the increased diversity there? Are those big wins getting to the target market, and how can we do that better, Mary Liz, do you think?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is, and it comes back to the partnership, Porrick, and it's with the second level system and with guidance counsellors. And I think I saw a couple of other comments about the really important role of guidance counsellors in all of this. You know, I think that there needs to be a kind of a real, you know, I think just like I absolutely agree with Claire's point about a dedicated work stream with employers, but I think there's also that focus on spreading out the message about apprenticeship right throughout the system and reaching actually not just second level, but primary level students as well. And just the communicating that message about, you know, what apprenticeship is as a way of learning, and then all of the opportunities that are available. And happily now, you know, there's a very big offering there. There's lots of choice there, and there will be more over the next number of years, which is fantastic. I think, you know, just to go back to, I think Claire mentioned the Generation Apprenticeship competitions. The last 2 years, we've had two fantastic second level competitions with second level students, Youth Reach and Community Training Centre learners. And the theme was all about green skills and sustainability. And the participation was just phenomenal. The entries that teams came back with, the engagement that the learners had. I mean, and anybody who has or knows young people under 20 years of age, they're hugely concerned about and interested in and committed to, you know, challenging climate change, challenging what's happening, you know, to preserve our you know, our futures and their futures and future generations. So, you know, I think there's an open door there, and I think it's about how, as we move forward with apprenticeship, how we find really innovative ways of actually reaching that group and, you know, getting those messages out, and in a way convincing that new generation coming up that actually we take it just as seriously as they do. And, you know, we're building and embedding green skills, green technologies into all of our education and training, and indeed all of what happens within industry and within companies. So, you know, I think it's going to be really important dimension of what we do over the coming years, Porrick.
That's great. Liam, you wanted to just come in?
Yeah, just very, very quickly, Porrick, just kind of to build on what Claire and Mary Liz has just said there. In attracting apprentices kind of to apprenticeship as a way of learning, key to that as well is a pointer to quality employment after training. And, you know, because sustainable employment kind of, and, you know, and decent standards of living and terms and conditions of employment, that's a very, very important aspect to it as well, kind of that they can see career development. And Claire talked about people becoming entrepreneurs through apprenticeship. And I mean, people want to see a decent standard of living after apprenticeship and kind of, you know, good quality employment. So that's an important part of the selling project as well, in terms of making apprenticeship attractive. So thanks for that opportunity, Paul.
Okay, thanks very much. We've just gone beyond 12. I'm looking at the attendees notice, and I know from that people are dropping off to other meetings afternoon. So I'd like to finish up there. Particularly like to thank members of the panel, William, Claire, Vivian, Liam, Mary Liz, and Tommy, and to Phil for teeing us up there, and of course to the Secretary General and the two ministers. There's a lot of questions that come through on the Q&A. We're committed. The department will look at those, look at the answers, send them out, and some of them will find their way into the updated Q&A. So thanks everybody. There's great attendance. We've held on to over 200 people. A very exciting action plan that we're all going to be part of, and great to see everyone here this morning. Thank you all for your contribution. So.
Thank you.